and I'll be talking about an initiative called Trailblazers, which is an open access scheme for early career researchers, which as a library we developed in partnership with a number of other libraries. Before I go into kind of what the scheme is, I'll talk a bit more about what an open access book is and why we felt there was a need to design the scheme and work in collaboration with other libraries as well. Then I'll go into some detail about what we actually did and how we worked together, and then what the scheme entails for researchers and what the impact has been. So just to get us going and just to make sure that we're all on the same page, let's start by defining what we mean by an open access book. So an open access book is a book that's made available online with an open license, and it's accessible for free for anyone without registration or other access barriers. So essentially anyone can access the contents of that research without having to pay to access that or be a member of a library which pays to access that content. And as you can imagine, this has several benefits for broader society and for the researchers themselves. So one of the benefits that a lot of the literature talks about in relation to open access books is the potential for increasing the readership, usage and citations that research obtains. So there's a few reports that I've referenced here. One of them, which was conducted by Springer Nature, found that on average, open access book titles were downloaded 10 times more than non-open access titles. There's also the second report referenced here was by MIT, and they found that on average, their open access book titles were cited 2.5 times more than non-open access titles. So there's real benefits to a researcher and an author for making their research open access. There's also benefits to enabling a broader and more diverse audience to access the research and the contents of that book. So, for example, people who are working in the third sector, people who are members of communities that research may affect, or who've potentially been involved in kind of co-creating and developing that research are able to access the content of that research for free. And it means that a broader pool of people can access the content of those books because they're published open access. Other benefits include faster impact. So rather than having to wait for a book to be purchased by a university library or purchased by another organisation, because it's available for free often immediately upon publication. It does mean that the impact of that work is a lot quicker and a lot more people can download and access and utilise that research a lot more quickly than they would for non-open access titles. And another benefit is that authors usually retain more rights to their research when they publish open access. So due to the licenses that were applied, they generally have more control over who can utilise that research and actually retain the rights to some of the research that's published in the books as well. So there's several benefits to publishing an open access book. There's so many benefits for publishing open access books. Why doesn't everyone do it? Well, there's several barriers to publishing open access books. One of them, and the biggest cost, as many of you might be aware, is the cost. So at the moment, the more traditional and typical model for publishing an open access book is something called a book processing charge, which is where a library or a research grant will pay a fee to a publisher to publish that book open access. Now, these book processing charge fees can be really expensive. They can cost typically between £10,000 to £15,000 per book plus VAT. And you can imagine that if a library was to try and pay for all of our researchers who publish books to have those books made open access, that would be extremely expensive and is just not realistic or sustainable. We did some research at Lancaster into what the cost might be for making all of our titles published in a single year open access via this model. And if we were to publish every book with an average cost of about £12,500, we'd be looking at paying about £300,000 a year. So it is very expensive. And to be honest with you, one of the main barriers is finances. But there's also other barriers to researchers publishing open access books and open access books becoming normal amongst our researcher communities. So other barriers include a lack of awareness and misconceptions. So there's a lot of misconceptions about what an open access book actually is. A common example is that a lot of researchers perceive that an open access book is not peer reviewed and is not as good a quality piece of academic work as a non-open access title. There's also misconceptions around what that actually means for the book itself and the way it's presented. There's quite a few people who've approached the library and who we've had conversations with who believe that, or did believe that, an open access book was just a flat PDF that was put on the website, and there wasn't any kind of dynamic or kind of interesting content or ways of presenting that research that you might get with a non-open access title. And that's a misconception. And a lot of publishers use different formats and different ways of publishing open access titles. And there's also misconceptions around whether an open access title can also have a print copy produced, and whether an author can receive royalties from those sales. So again, that's a common misconception. The majority of open access book publishers also produce physical copies of the books and sell them, and authors also receive royalties for those sales on the physical copies as well. And then finally, a major barrier is around research culture, and in particular, one of the big barriers is around kind of the prestige of who you publish with. So within kind of the publishing landscape, a lot of the kind of bigger, more traditional publishers who are seen as perhaps being more prestigious, they tend to charge quite high book processing charge fees, and because of that, it creates a barrier for researchers wanting to publish open access or being able to publish open access through that model. This is particularly prevalent as well amongst early career researchers, who, as I'm sure you're aware, tend to be in more precarious positions, that they tend to be on temporary contracts and feel under pressure to publish with the most prestigious publisher in order to help them to get that next role or that first permanent contract. So there's issues with prestige over who we publish with, and there's a number of more grassroots or diamond open access presses who operate on a model who don't charge book processing charge fees to publish with them. But again, there's some I'd say either mistrust or unwillingness to publish with some of those less traditional, I guess, publishers due to that prestige factor. So that's another barrier that we come up against when it comes to trying to persuade people to publish open access books. So with bearing all this in mind, we as a library collaborated with the libraries of Liverpool University, the University of Salford, and Liverpool University Press to develop the Trailblazers scheme, which I'll now go into a bit more detail and discuss what the scheme is. So the scheme was developed to try and address some of the barriers to publishing open access books that we just discussed. We wanted to take a new approach to publishing open access that would try and raise awareness and kind of alternative models for publishing open access beyond the book processing charge. So with the approach that we've adopted, we've written into our kind of memorandum of understanding that as a scheme, we're committed to exploring alternative funding models for publishing open access monographs, and the scheme itself will actually run, we hope, on a diamond open access model in future. And I'll talk in a bit more detail about what that means and how we hope to achieve that. But one of the main reasons for developing the scheme was to try and implement this kind of culture change and develop this approach or develop this alternative approach to the book processing charge model for open access. We also wanted to address some of the other barriers we just discussed, so the issue of prestige and research culture. We really wanted to design the scheme to present open access book publishing as being prestigious and something that researchers can aspire towards and aspire towards doing. So the scheme, and I'll go into a bit more detail later, is presented as quite competitive, and we do try to celebrate the people who've been successful in taking part of the scheme and celebrate their successes. And again, we've also tried to create this as an opportunity for early career researchers. So we discussed previously that particularly the prestige barrier to publishing open access books particularly affects early career researchers. So we frame the scheme as being an opportunity for them, partly to try and address these misconceptions that some people might have around publishing open access, but also to give them an opportunity. As I'm sure you're all aware, it is quite grim in a lot of humanities and social sciences fields at the moment. There aren't too many opportunities. So we wanted to develop an opportunity that was exclusively for early career researchers within the space of open access book publishing. So the scheme itself was built on a collaboration between ourselves and the libraries of Liverpool and Salford and Liverpool University Press. And then when the scheme was designed, we'd all been having very similar conversations within our own institutions about what could we do in this space? How could we give people opportunities to publish open access books? How could we present open access as being prestigious and something that people aspire to do? And how can we give early career researchers an opportunity in this space? And then we found that because we've been having these similar conversations, we could have a lot more impact with the scheme and the work that we were doing by collaborating and working together to develop the scheme rather than working within our own libraries. We also found that by working very closely together, we were able to share a lot of knowledge and experience with each other. So we worked very closely with each other in terms of designing the scheme and how we would run each scheme within our own libraries. This has proved very useful just in terms of just sharing ideas and best practices between ourselves. And we've also found that it's allowed us to develop some quite close relationships with colleagues who were working on the scheme in other institutions. And it's allowed us to collaborate in other areas as well and share ideas. So it's been really useful in terms of developing our relationships with other institutions, but also developing those networks and that collaboration. So as a scheme, we meet fairly regularly. As I said, we're all kind of involved in sharing our knowledge and experience of developing the schemes in our own institution. And we have regular meetings where we kind of discuss how we're approaching things, how the schemes are going at our institutions. And recently, the scheme has been joined by 3 additional institutions. So for this academic year, we've been joined by Liverpool John Moores Library, the University of Reading Library and the University of Wolverhampton Library. So we're now working with additional partners on the scheme. So the scheme itself is a book publishing scheme for early career researchers within the humanities and social sciences. And we defined early career researchers using the UKRI definition for early career researchers. So that's roughly within 8 years of publishing their PhD, also accounting for career breaks and career gaps. So in some cases, it can be slightly longer than that. And the idea behind the scheme is that it's a competitive open access book publishing scheme, and that the successful authors on the scheme will be able to publish their monograph open access with Liverpool University Press, and then have any publishing fees covered by their host libraries. So alongside publishing their first monograph open access, they'll also have the chance to participate in a series of masterclasses. And these masterclasses are designed to develop the publishing skills and also the library skills of the successful authors who are taking part in the scheme. So we'll be delivering masterclasses on topics such as how to turn a successful or how to turn a proposal for a book into a monograph. We'll be covering open research skills as well. So covering topics such as how to understand the open access landscape and utilising things like bibliometrics and other research metrics in assessing the impact of your research. So alongside having their book published, they'll also get to take part in these workshops with their Trailblazers cohorts. And within the publication of the books themselves, all the authors will undergo a transparent publication process. So the way the books are published will be exactly the same as non-open access titles with Liverpool University Press. So they'll go through a peer review process. They'll have editorial guidance from a senior commissioning editor. They'll have professional copy editing, typesetting and marketing. And as well, the books will also be published as a hardback copy as well that people can purchase. And the authors will receive royalties for the sales of those books as well. So as I said, the process and production of those books is exactly the same as non-open access titles, and they'll have the same level of care and attention to detail from the press as those titles. So in terms of the impact from the scheme, it's been to be honest with you, overwhelmingly positive. So it's done a really good job of raising the profile of open access book publishing within our institution, and I think the same can be said of the partner institutions as well as part of the scheme. One thing we found is that departments find open access quite boring, and they don't really give us time and space on agendas when they're having meetings to come and talk about open access book publishing. But because we have a scheme like this, it's enabled us to get time on agendas and have the opportunity to come and talk to people about the scheme, and also kind of more broadly talk about open access book publishing. One of the impacts of the scheme as well has been to try and demystify some of the aspects around open access book publishing. So through being able to attend these meetings and talk about the scheme, we've been able to kind of change some people's perceptions around what an open access book is, what you can do with that, and address some of those misconceptions that potential authors have had in relation to open access book publishing. As I've said, we've had a number of new institutions who've joined the scheme for this academic year as well. And the scheme is open for any university library to join. So if you're on this call and you're thinking that this sounds like quite a cool initiative, we'd be interested in joining or finding out more, do feel free to send me an email or get in touch with Liverpool University Press, and we'd be really happy to pass on more information about the scheme. The scheme's run on an annual basis, so every year there'll be more opportunities for more institutions to join the scheme and take part in the Trailblazers scheme. And then finally, one of the key impacts has been the impact on participating authors. So we found that from speaking to the authors who've taken part in the scheme, they've really benefited actually from having an opportunity to publish an open access book, but also to be part of a cohort of other authors as part of the scheme who are going through the process of publishing their first book, and having that community to bounce ideas off and go through the process with them. So I've included a quote here from Kathy Chandler, who was one of our Trailblazers authors who was on last year's cohort. And Kathy has said that it's given them a really good opportunity to learn more about open access, but also have the opportunity to publish their research open access as a book, which they otherwise would not have had the opportunity to do so. So that's it from me. If you do have any questions, I'd be really happy to answer them. And if you'd like to find out more about the Trailblazer scheme, there's a QR code here which has some more information.
Thanks, Tom. And you were even under time. Perfect presenter.
Great timing.
That was really fascinating. Have we got any questions from the room? Your mics will be enabled shortly, so you can put your hand up if you want to ask verbally, or feel free to pop it into the chat. While we're waiting, I've got a question, Tom. I feel like this could be something that could really benefit our arts and humanities faculty, where they are tending to publish more in books than journals quite often. Have you noticed that there's a prevalence